Welcome to the New Life Stories channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching.
What brings pleasure is good. What does it matter if people think it's immoral? My name is Sarah, and I am a 22-year-old woman. I am an only child who was raised solely by my mother, Nora, who separated from my father when I was barely 5 years old. I always admired my mother because to me she was like a superhero capable of doing anything for me. So when Clark came into our lives about 6 years ago, it felt like my world suddenly came crashing down. First, my mom's attention was no longer focused solely on me, and I had to learn to share it with my new stepfather. Second, having a man in the house changed the privacy that my mother and I used to have because I had to behave more modestly and not show my body. But honestly, that all changed when I happened to see them doing it in their room. Clark was younger than my mother. He was in his early 40s and she was well past 50. His body was in good shape, so at 18 I often found myself involuntarily admiring his figure, which I found attractive. However, seeing him naked was like seeing him in a dream. At that time I had a good understanding of how relationships worked, but I had never put into practice what I saw on the internet. I hadn't had any boyfriends or anything like that up until that point, so this was my first step into experimenting. And instead of finding it disgusting or traumatizing, I found it appealing and definitely wanted to try it. My unexplored body didn't quite understand the sensations that seemed to cloud my mind, but with every touch of my fingertips, it felt like I was experiencing a piece of heaven in my mouth. My breathing was intermittent and my mind replayed the images I'd been able to glimpse while watching my mother and stepfather. Feeling my center explode after my innocent play, there was no doubt in my mind that I had fully accepted Clark into our little family. My mother was pleased that her little girl had accepted the one she said was the love of her life. I could only smile at seeing my mother's happiness, while deep down I wanted to continue to see what gave my imagination flight. The years went by and after 20 years I had several partners, different men with different lifestyles whom I brought home, trying to achieve the same result. At first, none of them could evoke the same feelings in me, but when Clark caught me one day, I knew what I had to do. And as if on some sort of routine, I started leaving the door to my room open when I was doing it with my partner, hoping that my stepfather would see what he had indirectly taught me. However, the only thing I got from him was a lecture that I shouldn't bring my boyfriends home, much less leave the door open when I was doing it with them. Also, he said, "Don't bring guys who can't afford a hotel room. Do you think those are the kind of men your mother would want around you for the rest of your life?" I shook my head negatively, letting the fake tears spill down my face. "Then act more responsible, Sarah," my stepfather said. Clark had always been a responsible man, very loyal to my mother and our family hearth, so I hadn't expected a different reaction from him. However, I wanted to get Clark's attention, and it was frustrating that I wasn't succeeding. But who would have thought the opportunity would present itself in the most unexpected way? That night, before I went to bed, I went down to the kitchen to get something to eat. Clark was there, and he seemed to be on the phone, which I didn't think was strange, because he was such a social person that he could spend hours on the phone. But there was something different about his tone of voice that day. His tone of voice resembled the one he'd used with Nora. And he seemed to be in such a trusting relationship with his interlocutor that I decided to stay quiet and listen more closely. "You know that, don't you? You know you can't call before." A short chuckle escaped Clark's lips afterward. "Shh, my love, you're going to make me laugh out loud." At that moment, I froze and tried to breathe deeply so I wouldn't jump to conclusions. "What are you saying?" "Nora's not like that," my stepfather said before going silent for a while. "I know. It's just, I can't, love. I have a family." My breathing was cut short for a moment as I felt my heart pounding frantically in my chest. This can't be happening, I thought in that moment. Mom wouldn't want to go back to a situation like she once did with my father. "Don't you know how much she loves me?" Clark muttered. A sigh escaped my lips and I quickly ran to my room. There I tried to regain my breath after running up the stairs of our house, still mulling over what had happened. My stepfather had cheated on my mom while she, the so-called love of his life, believed him wholeheartedly. This revelation completely changed my perspective because seeing him acting tender and loving with my mom while knowing he was cheating on her was nauseating. At the time I thought my mom didn't deserve it because she gave Clark a chance. It was Friday and my mom had announced that she was going to be late for a work dinner. This was my golden chance to play my cards right, So I reviewed the material on my phone one last time and headed toward my stepdad's and my bedrooms, where Clark was typing something on the computer. "Clark," I said, standing in the doorway of his room. Without hesitation, he swiveled his chair around and said hello to me. There I could see his eyes widen as they roamed my body. I knew that my outfit with the short skirt and t-shirt exposing my stomach was the best outfit to accomplish my goal. Clark always acted serious and respectful though, but after I learned his secret, it was easier to realize that he would succumb to the charms of anyone who looked seductive. "Is something wrong?" he asked me with his usual seriousness. I bit my lower lip and ran my hands over my stomach, feigning nervousness. "There's something I need to tell you." "What happened? Is this about your mom?" I walked into the room, shaking my head. "No, it's about you." When I was only a step away from his chair, I pulled my phone from the waistband of my skirt and held it up in front of his eyes. The moment the video played, the color fled Clark's face and he tried to say something, but he couldn't get anything out. It was a complete recording of one of my stepfather's very private phone sessions with his mistress, which was recorded entirely on my phone and no doubt served as a reference point for my own research. "Sarah, what is this?" he muttered, stuttering. "Well, why do you want it?" "I know your little secret," I said, smiling back. "Your mother doesn't know anything." "I know," I said, putting my phone away and pausing the video. "Why are you doing this?" he whispered. "Why?" I asked rhetorically, because I know it would really hurt her to know the truth. There were a few seconds of silence, during which we heard only our breathing. His eyes stared at me, and mine focused on memorizing his every feature. This wasn't my perfect stepfather, Clark. This was a man from whom the veil had fallen and he had to try to lift it again or his theater would be over. "You're not being fair, you know me well," I replied, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "What do you want?" he asked sharply. I said and exhaled, falling back onto the bed, "for you to look at me. Just look at me and I'll delete the video." At that moment, the zipper on my skirt slowly unzipped as I expertly slid it down my legs. I could feel my heart pounding as I watched Clark's lips open wide and his cheeks erupt into a blush. It was what I'd always wanted, and I got it. I slipped 2 fingers into my mouth, moistening the tips under his attentive gaze, and then those same fingers moved down, reaching where I wanted them, starting with gentle circular motions that elicited a moan from my mouth. "Are you out of your mind?" he exclaimed. I laughed, keeping my hand moving while my gaze was fixed on him. Although he seemed shocked, I could tell by his pupils that he liked what he was seeing. It motivated me to continue what I was doing, speeding up my circles and getting closer to the haze of sensation that was beginning to envelop me. "You're doing it wrong," he said suddenly, taking my hand just as I felt like I might explode. I gasped in surprise when I felt his hand in that spot. The warmth Clark gave me with his fingers was something none of my former boyfriends could give me. His skills seemed supernatural, for soon my legs began to tremble, and my mind went blank as waves of sensation intoxicated my body. I thought that was enough, but Clark took me in his arms and placed me in the center of the bed. "If you're going to do something, do it well," he told me. At that moment, his mouth melded with mine in a hungry, wild kiss while one of his hands held my jaw tightly. The pressure he was applying hurt a little, but I didn't let myself complain because I was getting more than I wanted at first. It didn't take long before he merged with me in a furious pace in the very same spot in the room he shared with his mother. I felt like I was coming out of my body while Clark did whatever he wanted to me. The most incoherent words and moans came out of my mouth. It was crazy to even think about it, but what many had been trying to accomplish for months, my stepfather had accomplished in just one night. When we were done, he demanded that I delete the video I had recorded since he had already kept his end of the bargain that we hadn't signed. I smiled and deleted the video I showed him, even though he didn't know it was one of many I had gotten by peeking at him to find out the truth. Those videos were my insurance to get what I wanted, and it would be wrong to delete them after fulfilling a fantasy I had cherished for years. However, after spending the night with Clark, I had become a little stingy with what I wanted from him. So even though I promised him that I would delete the videos, I showed him the video that could end his relationship with Nora on our nightly meetings, his face looking serious as usual. But after a few instances, I was able to peek behind that facade and see him enjoying our little game where he pretended to be hurt and concerned about my blackmail. I thought the power was mine, but in the end my stepfather showed me that he was the mastermind behind the plan. "So what do you think about all of this?" I know what I did was wrong, but I let myself get carried away with what I was feeling at any given moment, and maybe it got out of control. I hope you won't judge me too much for my impulses. If you want more confessions like this, give me a like and subscribe. Thank you so much, and until next time.